There I was, standing in my own garage at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, holding my car keys, when suddenly I heard the most terrifying scream I'd ever heard in my life. Thief! Thief! Somebody help me! Karen from the HOA was running down the street in her pink bathrobe and fuzzy slippers, her phone pressed to her ear, screaming at the top of her lungs. 911. Yes, I need police right now. There's a man stealing the car I just bought. My heart nearly stopped. She was pointing directly at me. At my garage. At my car. The same car I'd been driving for 3 years. But here's the thing that made my blood run cold, Karen wasn't just making a mistake. Her eyes were filled with pure rage, and she was absolutely convinced that I had somehow stolen her brand new car. But how could that be possible when I was standing next to the same Honda Civic I'd bought from Jim's used cars back in 2021? As I watched her marching toward my house with 3 police cars racing down our quiet suburban street, sirens blaring, I realized this wasn't going to be just another crazy HOA complaint. This was about to become the most insane morning of my entire life. But to understand how we got here, I need to take you back to where this whole nightmare began. If you're new here and love crazy HOA stories, hit that subscribe button because this one will blow your mind. My name is Mike, and I'm just a regular guy living in Sunny Meadows, a small neighborhood in Ohio. I work at the local hardware store, love fishing on weekends, and try to keep my grass green enough to avoid HOA complaints. 3 months ago, everything was pretty normal. I had my little blue Honda Civic, my small but cozy house, and neighbors who mostly minded their own business. That all changed when Karen Mitchell moved in next door. Now, I don't want to be mean, but Karen was the kind of person who made everyone's life harder just by existing. She was about 50 years old, had short blonde hair that she kept perfectly styled, and wore the kind of clothes that screamed, "I want to speak to your manager." Within 1 week of moving in, she had already joined the HOA board and started making a list of everything she thought was wrong with our neighborhood. Karen's first complaint was about my garden gnome. Yes, you heard that right, my garden gnome. His name was Gerald, and he'd been sitting happily by my front steps for 2 years. Gerald was small, cute, and painted bright red and blue. All the kids in the neighborhood loved him. But Karen marched over to my house on her second day and informed me that garden gnomes were tacky and inappropriate for a respectable neighborhood. I politely explained that there was nothing in the HOA rules about garden gnomes, but Karen just smiled that fake smile of hers and said, "Well, we'll see about that." Sure enough, 2 weeks later, I got a letter from the HOA saying that decorative lawn ornaments that don't match the neighborhood aesthetic were no longer allowed. Poor Gerald had to go. Then came the mailbox incident. My mailbox was black, just like everyone else's on our street. But Karen decided that my mailbox was 3 shades darker than it should be and demanded I repaint it. When I measured all the mailboxes and proved they were exactly the same color, Karen claimed I had altered the evidence and tried to get me fined $200. But the worst part about Karen wasn't her complaints, it was how she treated everyone. She yelled at Mrs. Johnson, our sweet 78-year-old neighbor, for planting roses that were too red. She called the city on the Martinez family because their kids drew chalk pictures on their own driveway. She even tried to ban ice cream trucks from our street because they were too noisy and attracted undesirable elements. Every week brought a new Karen crisis. She would storm around the neighborhood with her clipboard, taking pictures of anything she didn't like, measuring grass heights with a ruler, and writing down license plate numbers of visitors. The woman turned our peaceful little street into her personal kingdom, and she ruled it like a tyrant. Despite all this, I tried to be kind. My mom always taught me that hurt people, and maybe Karen was just lonely or scared. When she first moved in, I even brought her a welcome basket with homemade cookies and a gift card to the local grocery store. She took the basket but never said thank you. When her newspaper got stuck in a tree during a storm, I climbed up and got it down for her. She just nodded and walked away. I kept thinking that if I showed her kindness and patience, maybe she would calm down. Maybe she would realize that we were all just normal people trying to live our lives in peace. I was wrong. 3 weeks ago, Karen announced at the monthly HOA meeting that she was buying a new car. She was so excited about it that she couldn't stop talking. "It's going to be perfect," she said, showing everyone pictures on her phone. "Blue, reliable, and exactly what I need." She even mentioned that she was getting a great deal from some dealer across town. I didn't think much about it at the time. People buy cars all the time, right? But then strange things started happening. First, Karen began walking past my house more often than usual. Every morning when I left for work, she would be outside, checking her mail or watering her plants, but I could feel her eyes following me as I got into my car. At first, I thought maybe she was just being nosy as usual, but there was something different about the way she looked at my Honda Civic. It was like she was studying it. Then, last week, she started asking weird questions. "Mike," she called out one evening as I was coming home from work, "what year is your car?" I told her it was a 2021 Honda Civic. Her eyes got this strange look, and she asked, "And what color would you call that?" I said blue, obviously, because my car is blue. She nodded slowly and wrote something down in her little notebook. The next day, she asked me where I bought my car. I told her Jim's Used Cars on Maple Street. She asked if I had all my paperwork. I said yes, of course I did. She asked what my license plate number was. That's when I started getting suspicious. "Karen," I said, "why are you asking me all these questions about my car?" She just smiled that fake smile and said, "Oh, no reason. Just curious." But I could tell she was planning something. Karen always got this look in her eyes when she was cooking up trouble, like a cat watching a mouse. Her questions were getting more specific and more strange. She asked if I had ever had any problems with my car registration. She wanted to know if I had bought it with cash or financing. She even asked if I had ever let anyone else drive it. The weirdest part was that she started taking pictures. Not of me, but of my car. I would come home and see her standing by her window with her phone, clearly taking photos of my Honda Civic. When I waved at her, she would quickly close the curtains and pretend she hadn't been watching. By this point, all our neighbors were getting worried about Karen's behavior. Mrs. Johnson told me that Karen had been asking her questions about my car too. The Martinez family said Karen had asked them if they'd ever seen me driving different cars. Even Bob, who lived 3 houses down, mentioned that Karen had questioned him about whether he thought my car looked suspicious. I tried to talk to my wife, Sarah, about it, but she was working double shifts at the hospital and was too tired to deal with Karen's drama. "Just ignore her, Mike," Sarah said. "You know how she is. She'll find something else to obsess about soon enough." But I had a feeling this was different. This felt bigger and more dangerous than her usual complaints about grass height and mailbox colors. Last Friday, Karen made an announcement that sent chills down my spine. She knocked on my door around dinner time, holding a bottle of cheap wine and wearing her biggest fake smile. "Mike," she said sweetly, "I wanted to let you know that I'm picking up my new car on Monday morning. It's going to be so exciting." I congratulated her and asked what kind of car she was getting. Her smile got even wider, and her eyes got that scary gleam again. "Oh, it's perfect," she said. "It's a blue Honda Civic, just like yours. Same year, same model, same color. Isn't that funny? We're going to be car twins." My stomach dropped. Something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. It wasn't excitement in her voice, it was something else. Something that sounded almost like victory. That weekend, I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. I checked my car registration papers, my insurance, my title, everything was perfect and in order. I even called Jim's Used Cars to make sure there were no problems with my purchase. Everything checked out fine. But I still felt like I was walking into a trap. Monday morning came, and I was getting ready for work as usual. I had my coffee, grabbed my lunch that Sarah had packed for me, and headed out to the garage around 7 a.m. It was a beautiful morning, sunny, not too hot, with birds singing in the trees. I hit the garage door opener and watched as the door slowly rolled up, revealing my trusty blue Honda Civic sitting there just like it had every morning for 3 years. I walked over to my car, keys in hand, and that's when I heard it. That blood-curdling scream that made my heart stop. Thief! Thief! Somebody help me. But that wasn't even the most shocking part. As I turned around to see Karen running down the street in her bathrobe, screaming into her phone, I noticed something that made my blood turn to ice. Parked in Karen's driveway was another car. A blue Honda Civic that looked exactly like mine. If you're enjoying this crazy story and want to see how this insane situation unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Karen was now standing at the end of my driveway, still screaming into her phone while pointing at me with her free hand. Yes, officer, he's right there. The thief is standing right next to my stolen car. Her voice was so loud that windows were opening all up and down our street. Mrs. Johnson peeked out from behind her curtains, the Martinez kids came running to their front yard, and even Bob stepped out onto his porch to see what all the commotion was about. My hands were shaking as I looked back and forth between my car and the identical blue Honda Civic sitting in Karen's driveway. How was this possible? How could there be two cars that looked exactly the same? My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, but nothing added up. Karen! I called out, my voice cracking with confusion and fear. What are you talking about? This is my car. I've had it for 3 years. But Karen wasn't listening. She was too busy giving the police dispatcher every detail she could think of. He's about 6 feet tall, brown hair, wearing a blue work shirt. The license plate number is. She squinted at my car and started reading off my license plate number like she had memorized it. That's when it hit me. She had memorized it. All those questions she'd been asking, all those pictures she'd been taking, she had been planning this moment. But why? What could she possibly gain from accusing me of stealing my own car? The first police car arrived within 3 minutes, its red and blue lights flashing and reflecting off every window on our quiet street. Officer Rodriguez stepped out. I knew him because he sometimes came into the hardware store for supplies. He was a good guy, fair and reasonable, and I felt a tiny bit of relief knowing he was the one responding to the call. What seems to be the problem here? Officer Rodriguez asked, looking back and forth between Karen and me. Karen rushed over to him, still clutching her phone and practically vibrating with excitement. Officer, thank goodness you're here. That man, she pointed at me like I was a dangerous criminal, stole my car. I just bought it yesterday, and this morning I woke up to find him in his garage with it, trying to steal it. Officer Rodriguez looked confused. Ma'am, can you slow down and explain this to me clearly? Yesterday I bought a blue Honda Civic from Peterson's Auto Sales across town, Karen said, talking so fast she was almost out of breath. Same model, same year, same color as the one he's standing next to. I parked it in my driveway last night, and this morning it was gone. Then I heard a garage door opening and saw him taking my car out of his garage. I felt like I was in some kind of nightmare. Officer Rodriguez, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, this is my car. I bought it 3 years ago from Jim's Used Cars. I have all the paperwork inside my house. This woman is my neighbor, and she's been acting strange about my car for weeks. Officer Rodriguez nodded and pulled out his notepad. Sir, do you have your registration and insurance with you? Of course, I said, reaching for my wallet. But as I handed over my documents, I noticed Karen had a huge smile on her face. She looked like someone who had just won the lottery. That smile made my stomach turn because I realized she was enjoying this. She was actually happy to see me being treated like a criminal. 2 more police cars arrived, and suddenly our peaceful neighborhood looked like a crime scene. Officers Johnson and Martinez got out of their vehicles and walked over to join Officer Rodriguez. I recognized Officer Martinez too, her daughter was friends with the Martinez kids who lived down the street. Let me see your documents, sir, Officer Rodriguez said professionally. I handed him my registration, insurance card, and driver's license. He studied them carefully while Karen stood there tapping her foot impatiently. These all look legitimate, Officer Rodriguez said after a few minutes. The car is registered to Mike Thompson at this address. Karen's smile faltered for just a second, but then she puffed up like an angry bird. Well, of course they look legitimate. He's obviously a professional car thief. He probably has fake documents for every car he steals. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Karen, that's insane. Why would I steal a car and park it in my own garage? Why would I use my real name and address? That makes no sense. Because you thought you could get away with it. Karen shot back. You thought no one would notice because we look so similar. Officer Martinez stepped forward. Ma'am, do you have documentation for your vehicle? Of course I do. Karen said proudly. It's all right here. She pulled a folder out of her bathrobe pocket and handed it to Officer Martinez. I bought it yesterday afternoon from Peterson's Auto Sales. Paid cash. $22,000. As Officer Martinez looked through Karen's paperwork, I noticed something that made my heart sink. Her documents looked just as legitimate as mine. Same make, same model, same year, same color. According to her papers, she really had bought a blue Honda Civic yesterday. Both sets of documents appear to be in order, Officer Martinez announced. But we obviously have a problem here because there are two identical cars and two people claiming ownership. That's when Officer Rodriguez had an idea. Let's check the VIN numbers, he said. Every car has a unique vehicle identification number. If these are really different cars, they'll have different VINs. My heart was pounding as Officer Rodriguez walked over to my car. The VIN is usually located on the dashboard near the windshield, and he used his flashlight to read the long string of numbers and letters. VIN number 1HGBH41JXMN109453, he called out to Officer Martinez, who wrote it down. Then all four of us walked over to Karen's driveway to check her car. As we got closer, I couldn't believe how identical it looked to mine. Same color blue, same model, same year, even the same small dent on the back bumper that I'd gotten from backing into a pole at the grocery store 6 months ago. Wait. The same dent? Officer Rodriguez leaned down to check the VIN on Karen's car, and I felt like the world was spinning around me. How could two different cars have the exact same dent in the exact same spot? Something was very, very wrong here. VIN number 1HGBH41JXMN109453, Officer Rodriguez called out. Officer Martinez looked up from her notepad with a confused expression. Can you repeat that? 1HGBH41JXMN109453, Officer Rodriguez said again, more slowly this time. There was a long moment of silence as everyone processed what this meant. Both cars had the exact same VIN number. But that was impossible. Every car manufactured has a unique VIN, like a fingerprint. Two cars can't have the same number. There must be some mistake, Officer Martinez said. Let me check that again. She walked back to my car and used her own flashlight to read the VIN. 1HGBH41JXMN109453, she confirmed. Karen looked like someone had just told her that gravity had stopped working. That can't be right, she stammered. How can two cars have the same number? Officer Rodriguez was already on his radio, calling for backup and asking someone to run both VIN numbers through the system. While we waited, the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Karen kept looking back and forth between the two cars like she was trying to solve a puzzle. I was doing the same thing, but with a growing sense of dread. Mike, Mrs. Johnson called from her front porch, "What's going on over there? Are you okay?" Before I could answer, Karen spun around and marched over to Mrs. Johnson. "He stole my car," she announced loudly. "I bought it yesterday and he stole it right out of my driveway." Mrs. Johnson looked confused. "But Mike has had that car for years. I've seen him driving it to work every morning." "That's impossible." Karen snapped. "I just bought it yesterday. It's my car." Now other neighbors were coming outside to see what was happening. The Martinez family stood in their front yard whispering to each other. Bob walked over with his morning coffee, looking concerned. Even old Mr. Peterson from the corner house came shuffling over with his walker to see what all the fuss was about. "Karen's lost her mind," Bob whispered to Mrs. Johnson, but not quietly enough because Karen heard him. "I have not lost my mind," Karen screamed. "That man is a thief and you're all protecting him because you're friends with him." The situation was getting more and more chaotic by the minute. Karen was now accusing our neighbors of being part of some conspiracy to help me steal cars. She was practically foaming at the mouth with rage, pointing fingers at everyone and making wild accusations. Officer Rodriguez's radio crackled to life. "Unit 23, we've run that VIN number through the system. The vehicle is registered to Michael Thompson at 1247, Maple Lane, purchased from Jim's Used Cars on March 15, 2021. No reports of theft or irregularities." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "See?" I said. "I told you this was my car." But Karen wasn't giving up. "Then how do you explain MY car?" she demanded. "How do you explain MY paperwork? How do you explain the fact that I paid $22,000 for that exact same car yesterday?" It was a good question, and one that none of us could answer. Officer Martinez was studying Karen's paperwork again, looking more and more puzzled. "Ma'am, this documentation does appear to be legitimate. Can you tell us exactly what happened when you bought this car?" Karen took a deep breath and seemed to calm down slightly. "Yesterday morning I went to Peterson's Auto Sales on Highland Avenue. I'd been looking for a reliable used car for weeks. The salesman, a young man with red hair, showed me this beautiful blue Honda Civic. He said it was a 2021 model with low mileage and had just come in. I test drove it, fell in love with it, and decided to buy it on the spot." She paused and glared at me before continuing. "I paid cash, $22,000. The salesman handled all the paperwork and gave me the keys. I drove it home and parked it in my driveway around 4 p.m. This morning when I woke up, I was so excited to drive my new car to work, but when I looked out my window, it was gone." "But your car is right there," Officer Johnson pointed out, gesturing toward Karen's driveway. "That's because he brought it back," Karen said, pointing at me again. "He stole it from my driveway in the middle of the night, hid it in his garage, and was trying to make a quick getaway this morning when I caught him." I was getting frustrated with Karen's crazy story. "Karen, think about what you're saying. Why would I steal your car and put it in my own garage? Why wouldn't I just drive away with it? And how would I have gotten into your car without keys?" Karen's eyes lit up like she had just solved the mystery. "Because you have a master key. You're obviously part of some car theft ring, and you have keys that can start any Honda Civic." Even the police officers were starting to look at Karen like she was losing her grip on reality. Officer Rodriguez cleared his throat. "Ma'am, that's not really how car theft works. Modern cars have sophisticated anti-theft systems." But Karen was on a roll now. "Or maybe," she said, her voice getting louder and more excited, "maybe you're working with someone at the dealership. Maybe this is all part of some elaborate scam where they sell the same car to multiple people." Now that was actually an interesting theory, and I could see the police officers taking it more seriously. Officer Martinez asked Karen for the exact address of Peterson's Auto Sales and the name of the salesman who had helped her. "Peterson's Auto Sales on Highland Avenue," Karen said confidently. "And the salesman's name was, She paused and looked uncertain for the first time. "It was something with a J, Jason. Jeremy. I can't remember exactly, but he was young with red hair." Officer Rodriguez was writing everything down. "We'll definitely need to contact the dealership to verify your story," he said. "But in the meantime, we need to figure out what to do about these two identical cars." That's when things took an even stranger turn. Officer Martinez's radio crackled again. "Unit 15, we've got another situation developing. We just received a call from Peterson's Auto Sales on Highland Avenue. They're reporting that someone broke into their lot last night and stole a blue Honda Civic. The VIN number they gave us is 1HGBH41JXMN109453. The blood drained from Karen's face. All the confidence and righteous anger disappeared in an instant, replaced by confusion and what looked like fear. That's impossible," she whispered. But I was starting to put the pieces together, and I didn't like the picture that was forming. If Peterson's Auto Sales was reporting that exact car stolen, and Karen claimed she had bought it from them yesterday, then something was very wrong with Karen's story. Officer Rodriguez looked at Karen with new suspicion. "Ma'am, Peterson's Auto Sales is saying that car was stolen from their lot. But you're claiming you bought it from them yesterday. Can you explain that?" Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, she seemed to be at a loss for words. She looked back and forth between the officers and me, and I could see panic starting to set in. I don't understand," she stammered. "I bought it fair and square. I have the paperwork. I paid cash." The salesman, the young man with red hair, he handled everything. "Ma'am," Officer Johnson said gently, "we're going to need you to come with us to sort this out. There seem to be some serious discrepancies in your story." And that's when Karen did something that shocked everyone. She turned and ran. Karen ran straight toward her house in her pink bathrobe and fuzzy slippers, moving faster than I'd ever seen a 50-year-old woman move in my life. Officer Rodriguez immediately radioed for backup while Officers Johnson and Martinez took off after her. "Suspect is fleeing on foot," Officer Rodriguez called into his radio. "Female, approximately 50 years old, wearing pink bathrobe, heading toward 1249, Maple Lane." I stood there in my driveway, still holding my car keys, watching this insane scene unfold like something out of a movie. Karen made it about halfway to her front door before Officer Martinez, who apparently ran track in college, caught up with her and gently but firmly guided her to stop. "Ma'am, please don't make this harder than it needs to be," Officer Martinez said kindly. "We just need to ask you some questions and get this sorted out." Karen was breathing heavily, and I could see tears starting to form in her eyes. All the anger and confidence from earlier had completely disappeared. Now she just looked scared and confused, like a lost child. "I don't understand what's happening," she said, her voice shaking. "I bought that car. I have the paperwork. I don't know why you're treating me like a criminal." Officer Rodriguez walked over with his radio still in hand. "Ma'am, I just spoke with Peterson's Auto Sales. They confirmed that a blue Honda Civic with VIN number 1HGBH41JXMN109453 was stolen from their lot sometime between midnight and 6 a.m. this morning. They also confirmed that they have no record of selling any vehicle to a Karen Mitchell yesterday or any other day." The color drained completely from Karen's face. "That's impossible," she whispered. "I was there. I test drove it. I paid cash. $22,000. The young man with red hair. "Ma'am," Officer Johnson said gently, "Peterson's Auto Sales doesn't have any employees with red hair. Their only salesman is a 45-year-old man named Robert Chen." I watched as Karen seemed to deflate like a balloon. She looked around at all of us, the 3 police officers, me, and the neighbors who were still watching from their yards, and I could see the exact moment when reality hit her. Her legs got wobbly, and Officer Martinez had to help her sit down on the curb. "I need to call the dealership where I bought the car," Karen said desperately, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. "There has to be some mistake. Maybe I have the wrong dealership. Maybe it was Patterson's Auto Sales, not Peterson's." But as she scrolled through her phone, looking for a number that apparently didn't exist, I started to feel something I never expected to feel for Karen: sympathy. This wasn't the behavior of a criminal mastermind or even a difficult neighbor trying to cause trouble. This was the behavior of someone who was genuinely confused and frightened. Officer Rodriguez knelt down next to Karen. "Ma'am, I need you to think very carefully. Can you walk me through exactly what happened yesterday? Start from the beginning and tell me everything you remember." Karen took a shaky breath and closed her eyes. "Yesterday morning I was reading the newspaper when I saw an ad for Peterson's Auto Sales. They had a blue Honda Civic for sale that looked perfect for what I needed. I called the number in the ad, and a nice young man answered. He said yes, the car was still available, and I could come look at it any time." She paused and opened her eyes. "So I got dressed and drove over there. It's about a 20-minute drive from here. When I got there, This young salesman with red hair was waiting for me in the parking lot. He showed me the car, let me test drive it, and we agreed on a price of $22,000. What did you pay with? Officer Martinez asked. Cash, Karen said. I went to my bank first and withdrew the money. I had it all in an envelope, $22,000 in $100 bills. Officer Johnson looked concerned. Ma'am, that's a lot of cash to be carrying around. Did anyone see you with that money? Karen nodded. The bank teller who helped me. Her name was Jennifer. She asked what I needed so much cash for, and I told her I was buying a car. This was getting stranger by the minute. Officer Rodriguez was taking notes of everything Karen was saying, and I could tell he was trying to piece together what had really happened. After you paid for the car, what happened next? Officer Rodriguez asked. The young man gave me the keys and all the paperwork, Karen continued. The title, registration, insurance forms, everything looked official. He even gave me a receipt. Then I drove the car home and parked it in my driveway. Can you show us this paperwork and receipt? Officer Martinez asked. Karen nodded and stood up slowly. It's all in my house. Let me go get it. The officers followed Karen to her front door, and I decided to tag along because, honestly, I needed to see how this was going to end. My whole morning had been turned upside down, and I still didn't understand what was really happening. Inside Karen's house, everything was exactly what you'd expect from someone like her. Everything was perfectly organized and spotlessly clean. She had motivational quotes on the walls, fake flowers in expensive vases, and furniture that looked like it came straight out of a catalog. Karen went to a small desk in her living room and pulled out a manila folder. Here, she said, handing it to Officer Rodriguez. Everything is right here. Officer Rodriguez opened the folder and examined the contents carefully. After a few minutes, he looked up with a puzzled expression. Ma'am, these documents, they're very well made, but there are some problems with them. What kind of problems? Karen asked, her voice getting smaller. Well, for starters, the dealer license number on this paperwork doesn't match Peterson's auto sales. Also, the formatting is slightly off from what official dealership documents usually look like. And this receipt. He held up a piece of paper. This was printed on regular computer paper, not the carbon copy forms that dealerships typically use. Karen sat down heavily on her couch. I don't understand. Are you saying someone tricked me? Ma'am, it's starting to look that way, Officer Johnson said kindly. Can you describe this dealership to us? What did the building look like? How many cars were on the lot? Karen closed her eyes and tried to remember. It was a small lot. Maybe 20 or 30 cars. The building was white with big windows and a sign that said Peterson's Auto Sales. There was a small office inside with a desk and some chairs. And you said you called them first? Officer Martinez asked. Yes, I called the number from the newspaper ad. Can you show us this ad? Karen went to her kitchen and came back with yesterday's newspaper. She flipped through the pages until she found the classified section. Here, she said, pointing to a small ad. This one. Officer Rodriguez looked at the ad and immediately frowned. Ma'am, this ad says Peterson's Auto Sales, but the phone number listed here is not their real number. I just called Peterson's Auto Sales 20 minutes ago, and their number is completely different. I was starting to understand what had happened, and it made me feel sick to my stomach. Someone had targeted Karen. Someone had created a fake newspaper ad with a fake phone number, set up what sounded like a fake dealership, and stolen $22,000 from her in cash. Karen, I said gently, I think someone scammed you. I think they stole your money and gave you stolen paperwork for a stolen car. Karen looked at me with tears streaming down her face. But why? Why would someone do that to me? It was a good question, and one that made me think about Karen's behavior over the past few months. She had made a lot of enemies in our neighborhood with her constant complaints and mean-spirited attitude. She had also been very public about having money. She was always bragging about her savings account and how she could afford to pay cash for whatever she wanted. Officer Rodriguez was back on his radio, calling for a detective to come investigate what was clearly a case of fraud and theft. While we waited, Karen sat on her couch crying, and for the first time since she'd moved to our neighborhood, I felt genuinely sorry for her. "Karen," I said, sitting down in the chair across from her, "I'm really sorry this happened to you. No one deserves to be tricked like that." She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "Mike, I owe you a huge apology. I accused you of being a thief when you were just trying to go to work. I called the police on you and embarrassed you in front of all our neighbors. I've been nothing but horrible to you since I moved here, and you're still being kind to me." I felt a lump forming in my throat. "Karen, we all make mistakes. The important thing is that we learn from them and try to do better. But I've been so awful," she continued. "I complained about your garden gnome and your mailbox and everything else I could think of. I made everyone in this neighborhood miserable, including myself. And why? Because I was lonely and angry and I didn't know how to make friends, so I decided to make enemies instead." Mrs. Johnson, who had been quietly listening from the doorway, stepped into the room. "Karen, dear, we all want to help you get through this. Mike is right, we all make mistakes. What matters is what we do next." Over the next 2 hours, Detective Sarah Williams arrived and took Karen's full statement. It became clear that Karen had been the victim of an elaborate scam. Someone had placed fake ads in multiple newspapers around the city, targeting people who were looking to buy cars with cash. When potential victims called the fake phone number, they were directed to a temporary location that looked like a legitimate dealership but was actually just a rented lot with stolen cars. Detective Williams explained that this was part of a larger criminal operation that had been running for months. The scammers would rent empty lots for short periods, fill them with stolen cars, and then sell those cars to unsuspecting victims for cash. By the time the victims realized something was wrong, the scammers were long gone with the money. "The good news," Detective Williams told Karen, "is that we've been tracking this group, and we have some leads. There's a chance we might be able to recover your money, though I can't make any promises." Karen nodded, wiping her eyes with a tissue. "I understand. I just feel so stupid for falling for it." "Don't feel stupid," Detective Williams said firmly. "These people are professionals. They've done this to dozens of victims across 3 states. You're not the first person to be fooled by them, and unfortunately, you probably won't be the last." After the detective left and the police cars drove away, our neighborhood finally started to return to normal. But something had changed. Karen's experience had affected all of us, and I could see neighbors talking to each other in ways they hadn't in months. Mrs. Johnson invited Karen over for dinner that night. The Martinez family brought her a casserole and offered to help her with anything she needed. Even Bob, who had been one of Karen's harshest critics, came over to check on her and see if she needed a ride to the bank or anywhere else. That evening, as I was grilling burgers for dinner, Karen walked over to my backyard. She looked exhausted but somehow more at peace than I'd ever seen her. "Mike," she said, "I wanted to thank you for being so kind to me today. I didn't deserve it, but you were there for me anyway." "Karen, that's what neighbors do," I said, flipping a burger. "We look out for each other, even when we don't always get along." "I want to make things right," she said. "I want to apologize to everyone I've hurt and try to be a better neighbor. I know it won't be easy, and I know some people might not forgive me, but I want to try." "I think that's a great idea," I said. "And if you want some help, I'd be happy to introduce you to people properly. Maybe we can start with a neighborhood barbecue." Karen's face lit up with the first genuine smile I'd ever seen from her. "I would love that. Can I bring something? I make a really good potato salad." And that's how Karen Mitchell, the most feared HOA member in our neighborhood's history, became one of our closest friends. It turns out that sometimes the people who seem the meanest are really just the most hurt and lonely. Karen had moved to our neighborhood after her husband died, leaving her with a lot of money but no family and no friends. She had tried to control everything around her because she felt like her whole life was out of control. Over the following weeks, Karen did indeed apologize to everyone she had wronged. She personally went to each house on our street, admitted her mistakes, and asked for forgiveness. Not everyone was ready to forgive her immediately, but most people appreciated her honesty and willingness to change. She resigned from the HOA board and actually advocated for removing some of the stricter rules she had pushed through. My garden gnome Gerald returned to his place of honor by my front steps, and Karen even bought him a little garden gnome friend to keep him company. Detective Williams was true to her word. 3 months later, the police caught the scammers and recovered most of Karen's money. Karen used some of that money to throw a huge neighborhood block party, complete with a live band, carnival games for the kids, and enough food to feed an army. At that block party, I watched Karen laughing with Mrs. Johnson, helping the Martinez kids with the ring toss game, and actually enjoying herself for what seemed like the first time since I'd known her. She had learned that being kind and generous brought her much more happiness than being controlling and mean ever had. The crazy morning when Karen called 911 thinking I had stolen her car turned out to be the beginning of a beautiful friendship and a completely transformed neighborhood. It taught all of us that everyone has a story, everyone is fighting battles we know nothing about, and sometimes the most difficult people in our lives are the ones who need kindness the most. And whenever someone new moves to our neighborhood now, we make sure to welcome them with homemade cookies and an invitation to our monthly potluck dinners. Because we learned that building community and showing empathy is always better than building walls and making enemies. As for Karen's blue Honda Civic, well, it was returned to Peterson's Auto Sales, and Karen ended up buying a different car, a red Toyota Camry that she absolutely loves. She says red is much more her color anyway, and I have to agree. Sometimes the craziest days lead to the most beautiful outcomes, and sometimes the worst neighbors turn out to be the best friends you never knew you needed. If this story taught you something about kindness, forgiveness, and the power of community, make sure you're subscribed for more incredible true stories that will restore your faith in humanity.